Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Marc Guberti. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Marc Guberti, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I'm very excited about this show. We are going to explore our guest Tom Morkes' backstory of creating and launching a successful product. Tom is the CEO of Insurgent Publishing, a book publishing and marketing company that brings unconventional nonfiction to the creative outliers of the world. Tom's company has launched multiple bestsellers such as The 7-Day Startup, Stop Thinking Like a Freelancer, Do You Talk Funny, The Art of Work, and The End of Jobs. As a product creator himself and a launcher of other people's products, he knows what it takes to create and launch a successful product. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show, Marc.
My pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to be here. My first question for you is, why did you start creating products?
I did it because I wanted to create, really bottom line was I just wanted to be able to generate money for myself, like from the work that I did, from the creative work I wanted to do. And I wanted that to be kind of dependent on me, not an employer or something like that. And then the added benefit was digital products was a great way to go because I wanted the freedom to travel. So when I actually started that, after I got out of the Army in 2013, my wife and I, we went and traveled around the world for a year. And that worked so well. We were able to do this from everywhere we went because I could just work from my laptop, that we did it for a second year. So we basically spent 2 years traveling around the world, which is kind of looking back on it, sounds insane and seems insane to me. I can't believe we were able to do it, but it was really amazing. And I couldn't have done that without actually approaching and doing the digital product thing, writing books, producing digital products, and now publishing, marketing, and launching large-scale digital products from books to courses and membership sites and beyond.
I was recently reading one of your blog posts, and you mentioned you went to 12 different places one year. You went to the Philippines, you went to Italy, and a whole bunch of other places. So I'm happy to see you taking action on your dream and living it.
Absolutely, yeah. We were able to do that. I'm very grateful for that.
So take yourself to the point before you hit the breakthrough. You're going all around the world. You're making all of this revenue. What were you thinking about with that path in front of you before you get all of the success?
So before we actually were able to reach some kind of level of success, is that the question? So, I mean, I still feel like we're not like successful, like put a stamp on it or, put it in a bag, ship it away kind of thing, like it's there or something like that. I don't feel that at all. And I don't know if any person or any company does. I think you just have kind of levels of evolution or levels of growth, levels of wherever you're at right now. And so for me at the time, I was a scrapper and just trying to get something off the ground. But the nice part was I had very little overhead because we were doing everything digital. And I had some money and saved up from being in the Army. And so I had all that going for me. And then I just had the will to kind of go get after it. So at the end of the day, I had very little downside and I had a ton of upside. So that was it. It was just kind of, I don't know if you've ever read the book Anti-Fragile, but it was just a very anti-fragile play for me. The worst that could happen was, the stuff doesn't work out. And then, okay, I'm down some time and energy, but maybe I've learned a new skill at least. And the upside was, who knows? There's literally no cap. And that's kind of what I'm seeing now, is that we continue to kind of grow year after year, which is really cool. And now I have before when we started just by myself, really kind of doing it alone, and now have, a few employees, and we work with dozens of contractors. I mean, it's not the biggest organization, biggest business, biggest company, but it's definitely grown substantially in the last few years. So for me, the way I was able to do it without that, get to that level that I'm at right now, whatever you want to define that as, is just understanding that there's no real downside. Like the downside is super limited, and the fear that a lot of people experience, that I experienced, is it's all in the head. It's all fabricated. The downside is really minimal. Like you're not going to die if a book doesn't sell well, or if a digital product you work on doesn't move as many units as you'd like it to, or something like that. Like it's not life and death. It's not, the downside is so limited.
I feel like people emphasize that too much. They'll make it bigger than it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was that fear in my head too, but you just deal with that one day at a time. And it's not like the fear goes away. I think the fear only just changes. So now it's like, for me, it's just different fears. It's like, okay, will we be making payroll this month for all our employees? Where do we go from here? Like, are we stagnating or are we growing? And what's that ideal level? Because there's such thing as kind of growing too fast. And so I don't know. Those are all but these are all different challenges, different fears you have at different stages. So I guess I'm just coming back to it. Remember that fear I think is always there. It's ever present. In the same way that I see success as something that's not to be attained, but just something you do on a daily basis.
So when you first started, you had some money that you made from the Army. And when people have that type of money in front of them, just any type of money in general, there are two trains of thought. The first thought is save the money, use that as a pillow. The second thought is to invest that money into the business and see what happens. What did you do with that money, and what would you recommend to people who are presented with that option?
I think you just have to go with your gut. You have to go with kind of what you think is best. Like, at the end of the day, like, the best advice is useless to the wrong person, and it's priceless to the right person, right? So it depends on your frame of mind. It depends on what your goals are, what your aspirations are, and I think ultimately it comes down to kind of what your gut tells you. Does that answer your question, or did I kind of go off into a tangent?
Yeah, that answered my question. Just go with what you feel, because it'll be different for each person. The amount of belief you have in your business impacts how much you should invest in it, or if you shouldn't invest in it at all. Yeah,
I mean, we can go into the tough part is for something like that, is that you'd have to really do some serious analytical work to see if there's going to be a good return on investment. You know what I mean? So if somebody's starting from scratch doesn't have real statistics, it's tough to know. But if once you get started, you can kind of see, is there upside in this? And so I always look at that through the lens of what's the upside, and also what's the downside. What's the clear downside? If this doesn't work out, what happens? And when you're just starting out, as an example, the downside is always limited no matter what the project is in many ways. The upside, though, of course, has different limits in different ways. As an example, you're going to find that money goes towards money. So if you wanted to do something and you want to go, plan for the most upside, you could arguably say, well, it's going to be in the financial services or real estate. And that's just true. But you're also going to get more competition there. It may not be your thing. And if you're not passionate about it, you may not work hard enough to kind of break through that tipping point or break through that point where, most people quit. So there's a lot of things that I could go into detail there, but I hope that answers the question.
You did a great job at answering that question. A lot of great insights there. So when you launched your first product, what was the work you had to put in to go from an idea for your first product launch to actually having that first product launched and out there? Gotcha.
So from idea, it was just that. It was for me, it was a spark of an idea, and I started with it just a simple ebook, and that was the first thing I ever made money on, was an ebook. And that was kind of cool because it's one of those things that, again, what's the downside? That I waste some time writing a small book, whatever. There's downside so limited. But what's cool was when I actually did that, I'd done a lot of free content before I got to that point. I started a blog. I wrote blogs for free. I did a podcast for free. I created a lot of content for free. And then when I finally had a book that I was going to kind of put a price on, I actually decided to give it away as pay what you want. And then what happened was people actually started contributing, which was incredible. And I did about $500 in that first month. And that to me was the spark in the light bulb. And it was this is it. This is possible. Not only was it that I could create something and people would pay for it, but also the pay what you want thing was really interesting to me, that you can, not set a price on something and people will still pay money for it. And so it was eye-opening in two ways for me in that regard. And that was kind of what led, that was the thing that got the ball rolling. And so it always starts with the inception of an idea. That's how I started, at least in the beginning. Now it still starts with that same thing as, some sort of spark somewhere. It's not like I'm going around looking for ideas, right? But you get the spark and then I just analyze it. And now I look at it in a different lens, because now there's more downside. Once you kind of get established, the more established you get, the more downside there is, right? And the more risk there is. So now we kind of have a business model that's working. So if I wanted to take on a new project, I had to be very considerate of that. Do we have the resources? Do we have the time? Do we have the personnel? There's a lot of things to consider. But again, so it kind of depends where you're starting from, but you have to do that kind of heavier analysis the larger you are, and the more, more money you're bringing in, the more business you're doing. You have to be more cognizant of that. And in my case, when I did that book, though, to bring it to life was simple. It was just like sit down, write, edit, get some input. I put some of that stuff out there on my blog to get some feedback, which was useful, and then just ship it. Like I used Gumroad. I used like the most basic stuff that's out there to sell this, and I was able to make money from it. So if the hurdle somebody's going through right now is like, well, how do I get started? How do I get to the point where I'm able to ship something? I just encourage you to break it down to the simplest steps possible. And don't get distracted by things like, cover design or something like that. That can wait until the end. That's not a critical task item. If it's a book you're writing, write the book. That's going to be the most important thing. I mean, if you don't know what to write, outline it first. If you don't know what to outline, maybe you shouldn't be writing on this topic. It's things like that. When you break them down, they become pretty simple. And then you realize just the daily grind of doing the hard work. And it's not necessarily fun. Like grinding it out and doing work is not necessarily fun, but it's definitely satisfying.
I agree with the point about creating that first product and just getting it out there so that you have your own product. You also mentioned that you'll put in a heavier investment of time and or revenue towards products now because you don't have as much time and you want to create the product that's going to lead to the most revenue. How would you describe that heavy investment that you put into your future products?
I always think, again, I think in terms of upside. So if I'm going to take something on, and I'll just give you a framework, and then if you want to go into more depth, we can. But the framework, the way I approach things is repeating that, like what's the upside, what's the downside, and looking at what are the resources and assets that we have available to make it come to life. And then after doing all that analysis, then it's a matter of, okay, if I'm going to do this, let's do it. And let's do it right and not half step it. And I'll be honest, it's tough for me, for a guy like me. I like the idea of new things. That's actually kind of why I'm really good at what I do when we do these launches. We do book and digital product launches now for our clients and have done some really big launches. And I like that because it's always a new challenge. It's always getting the thing off the ground. And so I love that. That's kind of my thing. Managing things over time is not the most exciting thing to me, even though I do that in my business. But so I look at that and say, the key is a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of time and attention that has to just go into getting the thing shipped on time. So setting that ship date, whatever it is, and doing everything in your power to make sure that happens. And then, of course, you can get into details about how, but I hope that answers your question, Mark.
Yes, it does. My next question is, what is your biggest source of motivation that you use that helps you to create each of your products?
In the beginning, it was the excitement of, hey, I can create something, and now look, I can bring it to life. And then, hey, maybe I can make money from this. And now the thing is, hey, there's people depending on me. There's people I pay. There's, from employees to contractors. There's clients that rely on me. My family relies on me to make a paycheck. So there's a lot of driving forces now. And so honestly, that's the burning thing is I got to make sure this is done right. It has to be done right. If it's not done right, because here's the deal. My business model is pure referral based. We get everything. We get all our clients through word of mouth. So we have to do really, really well on everything we're doing. It's not the case for every business, but what we do is it's nice because we've kind of just we've done so much good work consistently, back to back to back to back, that it's led to more and more referrals, which is nice. So we have no need for new business because they just keep coming in from referrals, which I think is the best kind of marketing, but it's also tough to maintain. The key to that is to actually just do great work. So that's the fire under my under me is making sure that we do great work consistently, and we're always over delivering. We're always creating 10x the value that people invest in us. And that's it. And if we can do that, we can achieve that, then I know there will always be business. There will always be people who need help. There will always be people we can help. We can do even bigger launches for, as long as we keep doing our job, which is, doing the best that we possibly can.
What is the best part about doing all the launches with other authors and then doing your own launches for your own products?
So yeah, I honestly don't really give much time and attention to my stuff anymore. Unfortunately, it takes a backseat. My business is very much like an agency model type thing here. So we do a lot of client-based work, and so I always feel bad if I am working on something on my own when I could be working on a client's thing. So I do have to be diligent actually about carving out a little bit of time to work on our own platform. but probably don't do enough. With that said, I'd say the biggest thing I like about client launches is just that it's always a new project. It's always a new challenge. I'm able to take lessons I learned from previous launches and apply them and get better and better. So it's like the perfection of this skill set that's like super rare and most people don't know about, and you can't get a college degree on it. It's kind of interesting. So it's kind of cool to be in an area where an acquaintance of mine who's pretty well known in his space and doing really well business wise kind of pointed out to me. He's like, hey, you are peerless in your industry with what we do. There's really nobody else that does what we do. And then other names were pretty big names. It was like Ryan Holiday, and he doesn't really do what we do anymore. And there was like, I think, Tim Grawl, and I don't think he does these launches anymore. So both those guys that others would have maybe considered my peers or my competitors aren't even really in the space anymore. They're kind of more in the consulting side, or they're doing like their own projects and stuff like that. So it's interesting to be in that position. It's not that I can't slack, but it's cool to have been able to develop a skill set that kind of makes you peerless and makes it so that, you're not only the best around, but you're really the only one around because of this particular skill set you have. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's kind of, and I don't know if we went off on a tangent, but let me know if that answers your question, Mark.
It's being a unique provider within your industry.
Exactly.
So there are a lot of listeners right now. Some of them, their focus is getting blog traffic, or their focus is launching a successful product. What advice do you have for our listeners who are trying to reach their breakthrough in any area?
Goals are important from a motivational standpoint when you first set them. So do that. Get clear on those goals, know what they are, but then put in place a system to actually achieve them. You can't say, well, I want to be a millionaire and then walk around every day doing the same thing you've always been doing. It doesn't make any sense. You can't say, I want to lose 50 pounds and then go live your life the same way you've been living it. Nothing changes. So setting a goal like that is fruitless. It's useless if that's all you do. Goals in combination with systems are everything. And so a system is something that is a daily thing that you do that allows you to achieve that goal. So set the goal, define what the system is. So if you're going to try to lose weight, what do you have to do every day? Well, there's the diet and there's exercise. It's pretty standard, right? It's like those two things are pretty important. And then create a system around that to make sure that you diet and you exercise. That reduces your willpower to do so. That reduces the need for willpower to maintain that system. And then it's inevitable. Like weight loss is inevitable in that scenario. And in wealth creation and business creation, it's similar. It's not maybe quite as linear as fitness and health, but it's the same way. You want to set a goal, and then you want to define what that system is to be able to reach that. What does it mean? Does it mean making calls every day? Does it mean writing every day? Does it mean selling every day? I don't know what it will mean for each business, but the key is system, and its key is having a system in conjunction with a goal, and then to do the hard work every day, grind it out. But if you have the right system and you know what the goal is, if you grind it out every day, the nice part is it's one of those things that's almost inevitable. With the right system, the right goal, you almost have no chance but to reach it. I think the problem is that most people run into is that they might set a goal, or maybe in their mind, maybe they even write it down, but they don't create a system. And then the second biggest problem is people do set the goal, they set the system, or at least define some sort of system, and then they don't follow through. They don't actually grind it out day after day. And that's it. Like it's really a matter of that. I mean, there's a few elements at play there. I'm overgeneralizing, but those are what I see as kind of the biggest factors that can either help you or hurt you.
A lot of it's based on developing the habit to just put in the work each day and have a system you use to go by it. That's a great summary of it.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So for our listeners who are trying to create products and launch them successfully, what are 3 tips that you have for those listeners?
Okay, so 3 tips to launch a product successfully. So I'd say, I guess you have to backward plan this a little bit. There's probably more than 3 things you have to do. So I'll give you some kind of 3 major tips maybe. One is being very clear on what the objective is, and having metrics to be able to measure success or failure. So it might be, I want to do, I want to sell $20,000 worth of my book or my course in the first month. Okay, well, that's a pretty clear goal and pretty clear metric. And now you can do the backward planning to figure out how many units is that. If the course is $1,000, there's only 20 people you have to sell. So you actually don't need to get that many people into your funnel, right? If it's $20 or $10 or something like that, now you need a whole lot more people. So those are things to consider because that's going to dictate how you launch, right? That's one of the kind of cornerstones of it. Everybody just thinks, well, the more traffic, the better. But really, that's impossible. You can't just have tons and tons of traffic. It never works that way. So you always want to focus on targeted. And that's also one of the reasons you see people doing so much high-ticket stuff. I think, at least this is the thing I'm noticing in people doing more high-ticket stuff. Is I think most companies, most people are realizing, hey, I could sell a $20 product, or I could sell a $2,000 product. And in a lot of ways, selling the $2,000 product will be a lot easier. Don't have to generate as much traffic. I don't have to manage as many people because not as many people are going to buy the $2,000 product, but you don't need as many to make more profit, right? So it's things like this that you just want to be very clear on. What are the really down and dirty, like doing an analysis of the numbers and what you want to achieve and how you can measure that. And then there's probably a couple things when it comes to marketing. One is actually laying out what that launch plan is going to look like. So what does your editorial launch calendar look like? If you have a blog or a website or something like that, what is the content you're putting out? What does the funnel look like for that? And then the second thing is if you're able to get affiliates on board. So we do a lot of affiliate launches. We'll recruit affiliates. These are basically creating a sales force from scratch. People who will go and sell your product for you. And they get a piece of the sale. And what they do is they'll email their share about it and then drive traffic your way. So if you work with the right people, all of a sudden you can take a thing that might have done 50,000 and you can turn it into 200,000. Or you can take something that did $500,000 and you can do $1 million or more in sales. And every big launch, every really big launch, any multi-million-dollar launch you've seen has some affiliate component or just paid marketing. Usually they're doing both. But affiliate marketing is really, really powerful. So those are kind of the more advanced level stuff. But I just think, I guess if I were to make it, so there's probably more than 3 points, but I guess I'll summarize. There's the goal and the metric. There's the editorial launch calendar. And with an asterisk, maybe recruiting affiliates when the time comes. And then I think if I were to expand on that a little bit more, kind of some key things is, make sure that it's something that you have validated. Because a lot of people go into this and if it's their first time, they haven't validated it. So I'm a big fan of validating an idea before I ever build it. So in that context, I don't want to wait 6 months, do all this prep work, and then try to sell something that doesn't sell. That's a horrible idea. So better to build a little bit of an audience and then pre-sell them and give them a light version of the program or give them beta access to it, right? And sell it to them at a discount. And now all of a sudden you have your validation. And that's going to be the fastest way to get the validation and then to get user feedback because beta testers are almost always the best at giving feedback. So I recommend that. That's kind of a little all over the place, but kind of depending on where your audience is starting at, I think consider those points.
Do you find that the beta testing is critical, or do you feel like if someone provides free content on their blog related to their product, that doing that would be sufficient?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think beta testers are really important. I think getting people early into whatever you're creating is key for anything. Always have some sort of beta testers. Not only will it give you, immediate cash flow, but you will get the best feedback from them. And so from a product development standpoint, it's the best thing you can do. Plus, they usually end up being the best marketers for you because they'll be the most vocal supporters. Does that answer your question, Mark?
What is one great inspirational quote you could think of right now, and what does it mean to you?
All courses of action are risky, so prudence is not in avoiding danger, but in calculating risk and acting decisively. Make mistakes of ambition, not mistakes of sloth. Develop the strength to do bold things and not the strength to suffer. And I might have put that out of context. I might have done those last two lines in disorder, out of order, but it's Machiavelli, I think. And not that I like his stuff, but that quote I think is amazing and speaks to me volumes because, again, fear, I think internal fear is the thing that kills so many great ideas, great ambitions, great people. It's just fear. And it's relentless, and that's sad. But if you can overcome that, if you can develop the strength to do bold things and not the strength to suffer, if you can learn how to push through, and if you can, especially if you can learn how to calculate risk and then actually choose a course of action and act decisively, I mean, that says it all. And so I try to live by that every day.
That's a good one. The entrepreneur world, it does have a lot of risks, but the entrepreneur world gets a rap for being very risky, but it's not like doing anything else is not risky or anything like that.
Exactly. That's the thing. Risk is everywhere. And that's the truth. But a lot of people don't like to see it that way. And they don't even think. That's the thing. They don't even think or recognize it. It's not even their fault. It's just like, that's just the environment. It's just life as human beings. We think that wherever we are right now is the safest place because we exist, right? But that's not true at all. For 100 different reasons. Mathematically, it's not true. But the point is understanding, I think if you're listening to this right now, you're on the path. Whereas most people, anybody who's not listening to this right now, it's kind of crazy when you think about it, is not on the path and may not ever move from their comfort, right? And that's an important thing to recognize, that it's the people who are searching and learning are the people who actually are on the right track. So stick with it.
That's some really great advice, because learning is just such a critical part of becoming successful in any field that you're pursuing. I mean, in terms of like content marketing, I feel like I learn a lot more and I'm able to achieve more success when I'm reading other people's content about the topic than applying what I learned.
Exactly.
All right. So right now I'm going to give you the spotlight and I'm going to let you tell all of our listeners where we could find Tom Morkes on the web.
Yeah, I would go to just TOMMORKES.com and you'll find basically everything I do. I have a pretty useful, I hope, it seems like people's feedback is positive, pretty useful newsletter. That's if you're interested in marketing, product launches, book launches, that's kind of my space. And I also do stuff in pricing because I've done a lot of stuff in pay what you want pricing and things like that. But if you're interested in marketing and product launches and things like that, check out tommorkes.com. And then I also have a couple free courses, one on pay what you want pricing, which you can find on the homepage, and then also one on how to launch a best-selling book, which seems like always kind of one of those things like makes you cringe depending on when you hear it. But the strategy I lay out, I think, is pretty legitimate. Some people have said it's the best course that they've ever taken on the subject, and they paid thousands for other courses. So that's totally free. I do a ton of free stuff, a lot of pay what you want stuff. So come check it out and hit reply to any of my emails after you sign up for my newsletter. I read and respond to every single one.
Those links will all be in the show notes within the episode. Tom, thank you for taking the time to be our guest for this episode.
Mark, thank you so much for letting me be on the show and sharing some of these pieces of advice with your audience.
My pleasure. What a great interview that was. Tom put value at the forefront of his efforts, and that value combined with powerful marketing allowed him to achieve massive success. Tom doesn't take on every client who comes to him. He only chooses the best ones, and that's what allows him to deliver big time. There are factors that help you have a successful launch: audience size, the relationship with your audience, and other things. But all of those factors come back to how much time and effort you put in towards that launch. Breakthrough Success Nation, if you put in the time and effort today and in the future, you'll have a breakthrough launch just like Tom. If you forgot to take notes, then don't worry, we've got you covered with the show notes. Visit marketberry.com/E9 for those. You can ask questions over there, which I'd be more than happy to answer. To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. Two ways you could do this are through marketberry.com/iTunes or marketberry.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. How different would your life be if you accomplished all of your goals? I want to help make that life a reality. In the Boost Your Productivity Now course, I share all of the secrets behind my productivity and how you can achieve the same results. This course is valued at $150, but as a valued Breakthrough Success listener, you can get a 75% discount by heading over to markguberti.com/ productivity. This podcast is a production done by Marc For more insights, head on over to markberty.com.